Hello and welcome to the excuse me, King Heroes Journey podcast. My name is Beth Martins and I'm here with a very special panel today, men's panel, SB or Sean Alger, Scott Light so far. I hear RIUN ASHLIE's on his way and David MANNALL, who is Trinity 4. And so I have started Rockfin. There is a link for anybody that prefers that platform. And I'll just show that to you here in the chat. And that bumper music is my son playing. He is AKA Psycho on YouTube. Yeah. And you can sub to him there if you feel like it. That was my condition that I would always make sure to promote his channel. It's guns, guitars, and knives are his fascination over there. So he was playing a piece called the Quintuplet Meditation.
That's good.
Yeah, super fun. I'm happy as a mama. So today we are going to be talking about the potential differences on how and why men heal. And I still have a question mark behind that is it differently than women? Are there nuances around it that I might not be aware of? I've entered into a number of different discussions with a variety of men, some I've worked with, some I haven't. And I'm just super curious about this conversation. And David is here. I don't know if you can hear us, David, but your devices are not connected, it says. So you'll have to hit the button of the settings, the gear below, to connect up your camera and your mic. What do you think, Sean? Can he hear me?
That's a good question. I can hear you fine.
Just in the waiting room if he's not connected. Yeah, maybe he has.
We could always make a comment in the chat here, just in case.
Exactly, there's a private chat. You have to hook up your camera and mic below. Yeah, because I think it. Oh, there he is. Awesome.
Hi.
Welcome, Dave. How are you?
I'm good.
Nice to see you. Nice to see you. Thank you for staying up so late. What time is it there?
Oh, it's actually not that late. It's 10 p.m. Just gone 10 p.m. I moved to a new place today, and I've just arrived at a couple of hours ago and getting everything set up before. Took me a few minutes. So apologies for my lateness, but glad to be here.
No worries. And RIUN ASHLIE is still working on it for some reason. It doesn't work for me, Beth. Darn it. Okay, let me try copy and paste this one more time. So forgive us while we get set up here, but so David, I would like you to meet Sean Alger and Scott Light, who were both part of Journey Code the first year, the beta run.
Nice to meet you.
Yeah.
Likewise.
When it was an experiment. Doesn't work for you either. Can't copy or launch it. Oh, darn. What the heck? What could that be?
Yeah, it's kind of mysterious when it worked for 3 out of 4.
Yeah. Exactly. Oh, that would just totally suck if you couldn't get here. But I'll keep an eye on my chat. And yeah, I don't know another road to this room at all. So we'll make the best of it. And we're going to be here for about 90 minutes. Welcome, everybody that is joining. Please say hello in the chat. This is the King Heroes Journey podcast. If you haven't been here before, where the tendency is to highlight those strong individuals, can be men, can also be women, of course, that are willing to get out and say things that are not accepted in the popular mainstream. And instead of talking about what I will affectionately call the doom porn, we tend to talk about solutions here, how to have breakthroughs, how to go from a place of feeling relatively disempowered to feeling empowered and able and capable. Actually, lots of strong male qualities coming up there. I have a powerful fascination with the masculine feminine because I've done deep dives over the course of the years, especially 2015 when my father passed away. Hello, Kevin Donnelly. Nice to see you. And that masculine came in with a real technicolor and showed me that I, in fact, was not at war with the men in my life or the men everywhere, but I was at war with that masculine. And Ryan made it. He's here. Fantastic. And I'm going to bring you on. Yay, you did it.
It took a while.
Cool.
Greetings, everyone.
All right.
Yeah, nice to meet you.
Likewise.
Yeah, so glad to have you here. RIUN ASHLIE. This is David MANNALL, who you won't know yet, Scott Leipst, and SB ALGER, who are also past Journey Code participants. So, Ryan, you were in the third year, I think, right?
Well, same as David. I don't know if it was third.
Oh, right. Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what year we were, but we were together.
Right. It wasn't last year, was it? It was the year before.
Yeah, I think it was last year.
Okay.
That shows that, from when me and Scott started until now, to me, that shows that you've had massive, overwhelming success. Because it's like, how many times did I do this now?
Well, it's funny, Sean, because it seems both. Like we're about to run the 6th training now, starting next week on Wednesday. And it feels like, wow, that's a lot of ground to cover over, like literally since 2020 when things went kerflooey. That's when I decided I was going to create and run that first beta training. And it still feels like a baby at the same time. So lots of ground has been broken. Lots has changed, although not the overall format and structure of it. There's been lots of additions. There is now an advanced Journey Code group where the new modules get shared every week. And I have 5 apprentices working with me who are training to prepare others in that coaching capacity. So it's pretty fun. Feels new and old at the same time. And so I'm super excited about this conversation. We're going to go about 90 minutes just so you guys know what to expect. And I'm curious about, first of all, if you don't mind starting out, I would love to hear what you have to share about your Journey Code experience, if you want to take just a minute or two and from a man's perspective, because that's in fact what inspired all of these conversations I'm having both off air and now on air about what is different for a man in that context. That Journey Code is the deepest healing dive that I have of all of my work. It's a 7-month epic, 24 modules, 4 practicum weeks after that, going deep into the best tools that I've created, the archetypes of the hero's journey itself, and all the principles of being in that role as a coach in a clean way, a boundaried way that's going to allow you to really help people without hurting yourself or hurting them as well. No pressure. And so I thought, if you don't mind, we'll open up. And you know what? I also want to just introduce you guys properly because y'all have your own lives and your own accomplishments in different ways. So Sean, SB ALGER, should I read these or do you guys prefer to actually speak for yourself?
Okay.
What was that?
I'll agree. I think Ryan said just read them, so I'll just agree with that. Sure.
Okay, we'll just go. All right.
I'm okay either way. It doesn't matter.
Okay, sounds good. That's great. And so Sean, known as SB ALGER, is an artist, musician, writer, and gardening junkie. He currently appears on the symposium-style live stream called Weaving Spiders' Webs almost every Saturday evening, along with Jim Madden. Jim was the creator of that, right, Sean? You both, or both you guys? Okay, yeah. Ben Balderson, Ellen Marcus, and their guests, which I've been a guest of, and I love that show. I highly recommend that show. It's really hard to miss it. Sean has studied and commented on conspiracy, esoterica, parapolitics, and meme culture for a number of years. He's also a release coach under the Journey Code certification training. And you can find his work at his website, sbalger.com, and follow him on various social media through that portal. He's very responsive, I know. And he is the creator of my shower curtain that is fabulous, by the way. It is a piece of original art. And when I saw it, it's funny. I just like, I need that. I need to have that. It's so practical and beautiful at the same time. I enjoy it every single day.
I just shipped one to my mom, so the shower curtain marketing is opening up. But anyway,
very good, very good, nice, good mom. And I'm going to share his links here. With any luck, they come out not mangled. Sometimes the StreamYard doesn't do very well with multiple links.
Yeah, and it's fine. All the links are easy to find out. My webpage is really simple, so if it doesn't pop up, it's okay. It's just sbalger at Hotmail. I mean, that's my email address. Oops.
Right. Yeah, I think it mangled it, but they are in the show notes below.
Yeah.
All right. Mm-hmm. Great. Thank you very much. And Scott Lapes, for being here, was a Christian minister for 23 years. That was very interesting, Scott, as you were morphing into your own creation. I was starting a deep dive into Christianity. I've come out the other side now, from that place of, it's not a total rejection by any means, but it's funny. You were there for that whole trajectory. Pastor preacher for 11 years, and for 12 years he ministered in home churches and the prayer movement. He's done over 10 years of higher education with a BA in the Bible and ministry, a master's in biblical interpretation. Although Scott no longer identifies himself with the religion of fundamental Christianity, he acknowledges that the Bible contains much truth and wisdom. He's a certified hypnotherapist and has obtained a certificate of completion for the Journey Code Coaches training. And his passion is to empower others by providing keys to transformation, which is the name of his signature training, while at the same time exposing how these same keys are used against you. So that's really awesome. And you can find Scott at the topt.com, and I'll just drop that in the chat here as well. And RIUN ASHLIE, thank you so much for being here. He is a trained certified electromagnetic radiation assessment specialist, EMRS. He's done a great workshop in the House of Free Will on EMFs, by the way, and that we just edited your name just so you know that it's all correct now.
Thanks, Beth.
Yeah, you're welcome. Neural Vitality Networks, specializing in EMF assessment and remediation of fields and frequencies, including AC magnetic, AC electric, radio frequency, and dirty electricity, in addition to geopathic stress mitigation for homes, offices, farms, and businesses. In addition to help with the technology, he also coaches good people in the freedom movement to get past their sensitivities. And you can find RIUN at neuralvitalitynetworks.com. I know he's very popular. And even, can I say who you had a reading with, or not a reading, what am I saying? Mitigation session with?
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
It impressed my son. It was the front man of Metallica.
Oh, wow.
Yeah. What's his name again? James
Hetfield.
Hetfield.
Yeah. There you go. Yeah. Isn't that fun?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah,
Especially
cool.
since I didn't know who he was.
Right. And keeps him humble.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice guy. Yeah.
And thank you for being here. Not last or least, David MANNALL, who enjoys reality shattering and the truth that he always welcomes and almost always rejected at first. He offers flat earth information to break new ground, sow seeds, and support new shoots who know the only way is up for the canopy and down for the roots. And crucially, that earth is the center of the known universe. He says heliocentrism requires many beliefs, including that there is no true up or true down, such confusion for souls trapped in this delusion. But he's empathetic because he's been there himself and knows it takes a lot of inner work and letting go of external authorities to realign with true north. And this is where he says he can do his best work. With the advantage of Journey Code training and 9 years walking the long road to freedom, he's well placed to support people seeking to make sense of their life purpose as we exit Disneyland and create a new. That's really well said right there. And you can find him on YouTube. He's Trinity 4 Man, right on topic for today. And you can grab that link in the show notes as well below. So hello to everybody who is on Rockfin. Forgive me that it's harder to keep up with any chats there, and that just sucks. I can't put those comments up, but there's none so far, but we have some people over there. We're also live on Rumble and Rockfin, I just said. We're live on Vigilante TV. That's Jeff Berwick's website, also X and Fakebook and YouTube. So we're all over the place. And then after the stream, it gets uploaded to all of my podcast channels. So really decentralized around here.
Nice.
Yeah. All right. So let's jump in. And would you guys like to say just a few words about what it was like to go through the Journey Code training and enter this very deep healing kind of a space, especially in the company of women, because you guys were always about 20% of the gender factor there. Scott, do you feel like going first by calling you?
Sure, I can.
Okay.
Without being cliche, it was just life-changing. And as you mentioned, with my background, a lot of work in the spiritual realm, a lot of spiritual exploration and learning and so forth. And then also with the hypnotherapy, very much in the mind, dealing with the mind and how that all works. And so I really feel like the Journey Code was the missing piece for me, because that dealt with the emotions. And the thing is that we often, when people talk about like our being, oftentimes it's defined as our mind, spirit, and body, or mind, soul, and body, something like that. And you never really hear mind, emotions. The emotions seem to always be left out of that description. But what I discovered is that is key. I mean, it's absolutely key to understand the emotions and how all these tie together. So with all my spiritual training and background, all of my hypnotherapy, mental work, the difference maker was actually being able to deal with the emotions. And that's what was provided for me in the training.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Scott. And Sean, do you mind to go next?
No, that's just fine. I would agree wholeheartedly with Scott that the teaching that you provide, Beth, it offers a really safe, reasonable path to access your emotional foundation or your core, and to allow things to change around there in a way that has lasting results. And I felt like Journey Code came along just at the right time for me, where I had already discovered some things. I had met a lady who had taught me how to kind of get in touch with my feelings, but I was not exactly having full success. It's kind of like putting out fires instead of getting lasting, permanent results. And so I felt like your work came around right at that time, to not just allow me to help me figure it out for myself, but also to have the confidence that I could help someone else through the same or similar process if necessary. And so I use it almost every single day. And even if I skip a few days or don't think about it, I just forgive myself and carry on once it pops back into my mind. So
that's amazing. Good for you, Sean. Fantastic. And David?
Yeah, a bit like Sean, really. I think that it offered insight into the journey of healing and working through stuff in the various stages of the ag flap, as we called it, and as a way of helping people to reach their or release for their freedom, their the things that they're carrying, the things that have perhaps supported them over the years. So I found that a really useful element of the training, and I also some days will apply it to myself, and I found that to be helpful.
That's awesome, Dave. Thank you. And Ryan?
Yeah, for me, I was inexplicably magnetically drawn to the training. And I'd had a lot of exploration and work in the emotional trauma, psychotherapy, pre-perinatal, a lot of trauma work. But I found with the tools and working in Journey Code, it was so efficient in metabolizing and transforming the trauma layers. It just made everything much faster to process. That was a game changer for me, for sure.
There you go. Yeah, I think it's part of my masculine side. I don't know if I'm cutting you off, but I like fast. It's like, do we have time for this to go, draw over years and years and years and get lost in the weeds and, come back full circle, realize, oh yeah, right, that was the path I'm on. So I love speed myself.
Exactly.
Yeah, and efficiency. Exactly. You want to put in time and get a little bit of time and get a lot of results. So thank you very much. I appreciate that. And I have a list of questions. We'll see how many we get out. And the first one is about, is there first of all benefit to finding the generalizations of how men heal? Because every single person, of course, is unique, but it's not unimportant that you guys came as men into this incarnation, if you want to talk about it like that or not. That's my old India days talking there. And what benefit do you think there is in seeing, those what can be archetypal patterns of how men heal? Kind of a loaded question. Do you guys want me to call on you, or we can just blurt out and have a round table?
Well, if no one else is speaking up first,
Go right ahead.
Please.
I'm happy to go ahead. Yeah, I agree. There isn't like I've been thinking a little bit about this, Beth, and there isn't like a one-size-fits-all solution to most things, whether it be what you eat or how you heal. And there are, I suggest, masculine and feminine preferences or modes that are going to be more suited to one than another. But I'm aware that we are we're masculine, but we have a feminine quality to a greater or lesser extent, in the same way that a feminine has a masculine quality to a greater or lesser extent. So it may be a horses for courses type of thing. So, I don't want to say there's a one size fits all and my solution is going to work for everybody. But I do think that men working together and sometimes expressing physical type activities, like wood cutting, things like that, tend to be beneficial in the kind of healing journey, whether that be in a group setting or just one man working on his own through a log pile. So I'll start with
Nice.
that.
Thank you. Anyone else want to jump in with that? Is there benefit to generalizing about how men heal in the first place? I might kill the discussion if the answer is no.
Well, I think there is benefit, but it's just like anything else. You can't use it as like a permanent hard stop. That it becomes, the stereotype becomes a rule or something. But I mean, we see it a lot nowadays that they want to claim that men and women don't have distinction. So I think it's fine to lean on the distinction that for most people seems pretty obvious, that there is. I consider men to be more outward as far as their approach to the world, and more inward as far as their approach to emotions or even just private time at home. I was raised by all women, so I have a lot of intuitive. It's intuitive to me because of that fact, about the feminine. But I notice, in my interactions over the years with men, that's, I've kind of been given a leg up, but also you could, in some situations, you could say, that is a handicap that I don't necessarily have maybe the stereotypical man's experience. But I think it's good to make a distinction, male to female, and acknowledge, I think it was David who said it, that we do, of course, everyone has masculine and feminine in them, so the distinction exists, at birth. And I think, that outward inward thing seems to ring true in most situations to me, that the man goes out of the house, goes out to find resources usually, and has that approach in the community or whatever. And that, to me, that affects everything down to the core. So of course, if there's damage or healing that needs to be done, it's going to carry on to that also. So.
Right. Yeah, it's one of the things when I write about the warrior archetype, how, and this has been my experience, that men can much more easily go out into the world and build and create and be seen and take risks. But when it comes to the inner world, compared to a woman, like a woman doesn't want to go into the world and build and take risks at all. They would rather just keep on doing the inner work and avoid all of that other scary stuff. So it kind of mirrors that men seem to have a harder time. I don't like making that claim, but that's been my experience, that working with the emotions and feeling is more difficult. So
Definitely.
yeah.
Definitely. The thing is, like, women, and I'm generalizing, of course, now, but women are far better at expressing their emotion, and they're far more comfortable with maybe tears or an expression of emotion, whereas for guys who've come through the locker room and maybe through a male dominated kind of environment, or that kind of thing is not our normal place, and so as Sean was saying, I think we're better, we're good at the outward stuff, but the inner stuff is it's like, you don't want to be a pussy, you don't want to be soft, and you don't want to be like, putting all of that stuff out there. And I think, even to be honest, even in like Journey Code, I knew that I was battling my own sort of demons of being seen, having that stuff there on the outside, where from the inside, bringing that stuff from the inside out. We're not, that requires a certain and I think that's why sometimes, guys are better at doing it once they've had a few beers, because then it's like they can let that stuff out a little bit more. But perhaps also when I've had this idea for a few years of doing these woodcutter weekends for men, where you come and whack yourself exhausted on chopping wood and that kind of thing, and then you incorporate into that the time to, like, okay, let's because there is for men like a need to feel comfortable with other men, and then be able to kind of offload this stuff, and not be seen as a pussy. So that's, and I think creating that space is probably the biggest challenge when it comes to drawing a man out in terms of his inner world.
Yeah, exactly. And that's why I think you guys are so brave to come into a group setting. There was one of the people that I interviewed privately said that for a man to be vulnerable, you have to, this isn't exactly related to the group setting, but that it has to be earned.
Yeah.
And I'm curious what you guys think of that.
I'm not sure if I follow that. Can you say more about being earned?
Actually, I think that was me.
What's that?
I think that was me, wasn't it?
Oh, well, I think it wasn't just you, so that I heard it from two people. Yeah, maybe it was. Maybe I'm confluing. Yeah. Do you want to say more about that, Scott, since you did say that?
Yes. With the way I see it from the standpoint of a man is that vulnerability has to be earned. I don't just give up my vulnerability easily. You see, we have to walk together for a while, and that's why I use some different circumstances which men build that kind of
Mm.
earning. You know, I use the workplace, you know, like the wood chopping. That's awesome. You know, I use the workplace of like roofers. And I was saying, you know, maybe one guy's a 2-bundle roofer, you know, and another guy, he's just, you know, struggling along with a 1 bundle. But the thing is, when you finish the job, when you've endured the pain together, there's this camaraderie and respect that comes along with that. So even though you're just a 1 bundle man over here, you earn the respect of the 2 bundle man because you've endured. We worked together, we suffered together, and we got to the end of this thing together. And so even though you didn't carry 2 bundles throughout, you carried your load, and you find that respect. Now we have this commonality, we have this camaraderie, where I can be a little bit more vulnerable in our discussions of things and saying, man, you know, I was pretty wiped out too. Hey, appreciate you hanging in there. That type of thing. And so it's earned. You see it in sports as well. When you go through practices, 2-a-day football, whatever, you know, you build that camaraderie. You know, did the cross country with my daughters, you know, getting up at 5 a.m., running, you know, miles together. You build that. And so that's the earning part that I was talking about. You know, I'm not just gonna give my vulnerability easily. It has to be earned from a man standpoint. And that was where I was coming from on that.
Nice. I think women give that too easily sometimes, right? It just becomes this modus operandi that you go to the grocery store and you open your heart to the clerk and, you know, expose all your insides and come away with a vulnerability hangover. And well, I'm curious that this was interesting. I can't remember even, there's been so many conversations now, so forgive me if one of you guys said this, but that you know, say in my experience, there being about 80% women and 20% men, like just a really rough, that's been my experience. And in things, I've been at spiritual work for more than 30 years. And so I've been in a lot of different settings, and that's more or less the math of it. And somebody suggested that maybe it's because women actually need to do the work, and that's why they're showing up to this stuff. What do you guys think about that? Ryan's laughing.
Maybe it's women have been doing the work. Yes, and that's astrologically it's kind of on point. But apparently, I'm not an astrologer, but apparently the astrology suggests that over the next period of time, next 20 years or so, men are meant to be doing the work. That the time is coming for men to finally step over that that need for, you know, Vietnam style bravado, and move into a softer way with ourselves and with the world.
Interesting. And Ryan, you were laughing. Why?
Well, just because, I think women do need to do the work first because they have the courage and the vulnerability to go there. And if enough of them do that, it's going to create openings, doorways and windows and openings for the men to do that too. Because we're all just programmed, how I see it, like, so that feminine has to be accessed within all of us. Maybe that's a strong word, has to, but at least that's my experience. So my vulnerability is, as I learned how safety was perhaps like earned, it's just a sense of my own nervous system and how I can open it so easily with someone who's already open.
Right. That's what I notice is that in the groups that I have, it seems like they really end up empowering each other without any instruction or any seeking that. But they see somebody open up and they're like, oh, well, maybe I could open up too. Even like maybe they wouldn't have even expected to, but it creates a kind of momentum and a permission. Like, oh yeah, they opened up, they showed their inner experience. Maybe they shed a tear or not, right? It's never a requirement like that. The one thing that I really love about my process is that you don't have to spill your guts about all the details and tell the whole gory story. That as long as you know how you feel about it, then that's actually all the information that's needed to help. But yeah, that there is. I am amazed. In fact, all my life that I've been out doing things, I'm always amazed how people will jump in and take the risk and do the thing. Like my last course on the nurturer was a great example of that. A lot of brand new people that had never done this work, they've done their own work and in maybe a variety of different styles, and they were just popping like corn and jumping in and getting in the deep end and doing big work in front of a group on Zoom being recorded. I just think that's so courageous, and that it can create some morphogenetic kind of field process.
For sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Very good. So we already kind of agreed or established that it is more difficult for men to heal. What do you think that has made that the case? Like, is there just a certain amount of biology? Like one idea comes up that if there was something really painful and awful happening and the man fell apart like the woman is, then maybe the whole ship would go down, right? If they couldn't hold it together. What do you guys think about that?
Yeah, that's part of it. It's an experience I had that I think is relevant, and certainly relates to choosing to, as you mentioned, Beth, incarnating as a male this time. And I'd already done a lot of sort of emotional work, but when Saving Private Ryan was released, I went and watched it by myself. That was unusual for me, but for whatever reason, I went to this movie by myself. It was so impactful and raw for me that I sort of, just bared with all my emotions to the end of the movie. I had to get out as quickly as I could to get to my car because I was overwhelmed, and I could not stop uncontrollably crying. And I was very aware that I'd had many lifetimes of violence upon other men. So we're bringing that energy in collectively, and it's no surprise that we have to earn, that sort of safety now, because collectively we carry so much that we're transforming. Or at least that's how I experienced it. It was really profound. So of course I had to go and watch the movie 2 or 3 more times to process it, right? Because there was scenes in that movie that were so distinct about direct hand-to-hand combat and one man murdering another. It was just so wrong.
I think that brings up a really important point, Ryan, that in most people's experience in the world, if a group of women start to escalate, and I mean, let's just use anger as the most popular emotion and example, right? Make people uncomfortable and even slightly scared. But if I'm around a group of women and they start to raise their voices and really yell and scream, I don't automatically think, okay, they're probably going to get violent. Whereas with men, if men really start to raise their voices and posture up, change the way they're standing with their feet, change the angle that their body is at, I'm immediately thinking like, all right, this is going to become violent. And you just don't know what that means, And so I'd say that ties into this somehow, that to escalate into emotion, maybe by default because of the epoch or the time that we're in, that it's more challenging for men to access it because it draws us into conflict that might escalate beyond yelling, screaming, crying, or anything, that it could mean we have to actually have a physical violent confrontation. And so that, to me, that's a reasonable reason to avoid it. Most people do want to avoid violence. It's a pretty rare person that desires violence, and so it's maybe that's our default setting in this epoch that we're in, is just to avoid the conflict in general because of that, so that it doesn't escalate to an extreme.
Well, maybe another way of considering it is that we've learned certain ways of handling our rage, or rather, we haven't learned healthy ways of managing rage. Because rage is that does happen. And when you're young, there'll be times even when you've dropped your dummy and your mother doesn't realize you're pissed off because you dropped your dummy, and she doesn't know why you're crying, and there's all this, so we get rage and upset with things and so on. And I have a 7-year-old at the moment, older children too, but a 7-year-old at the moment, and we're having to allow for his frustration or rage to find healthy expression. So, I mean, I accept the point, though, that men are definitely far more likely to go, nuclear than a woman in the expression of that. But yeah, what we're talking about there is obviously a pent up thing, particularly because you see that kind of rage encounter far too often in our lifetimes, in our society, not for it to be endemic as a kind of we don't handle conflict very well, and that's probably something internal.
Yeah, a lot of people have that conflictitis. Is someone going to say something? Go ahead.
Well, I just recall being in a 2-year sort of very intensely emotional, cathartic type of training, healing container. And one of my first questions to the workshop facilitator was, in working one-on-one with other people, and if anger comes up in a really, volatile way, how do you handle that? And she said, well, you have to get comfortable with your own anger. That's all it is. And I was just, at the time, I was dumbfounded, just like, oh my God, that's obvious. But the only other thing I'll say is, I think part of the challenge for men is a very healthy dose of testosterone on top of all these emotional charges, which can create its own volatility, I think.
Right. Interesting. So I was just thinking about how the feminine basically tends to be more chaotic, and it's allowed to be more chaotic, so that, if you're eating your supper and you take a bite of something, it reminded you of this and that, and you start crying, and it is a pretty normal thing. And if a guy does that, it might be, I have to admit, it might be a little strange.
Yeah.
Right. Like I know more new agey guys that it almost like becomes a persona. They're trying on that more feminine side, but it's not necessarily authentic. And then, the masculine is about the container for that feminine wild, holding it, keeping some boundaries, because there's no end to the destruction of the feminine chaos potential.
Mm-hmm.
Yes.
I love that.
Beth, I was going to comment on you were asking the benefits of noticing the distinctions, and I stand on this premise for the work that I do, that all change is the same. The process to bring about transformation, whether it's in I call the big three: health, self, or wealth. The process, the technology, the techniques are the same. However, the modalities and the implementation of those things between men and women are certainly different and very worthy of looking at. But to answer your approach your second question about where we are and how that comes about, there's so much programming in our culture of what a man is, and when you look at even the characteristics of the masculine, the provider, the protector, the initiator, the conqueror, all of those things, it lends to, with those definitions, it lends to the idea of this strong front. How are you going to be a provider? How are you going to be a protector if you don't have that strong front? The protector, we're taught, in this society, something very different. And so I really like David's phrase of healthy expression. And as we talked in our private conversation about how I said, we're never taught about men. What's it mean to be a man? What's it be a man in America today? And that's undefined. It's very undefined. And I was saying that to bring about change in someone's life, mainly for men, oftentimes it takes an event, because more knowledge isn't always going to appeal to the guy, but there's an event. There's a situation. You have a sober look in the mirror at some stage in your life, and you say, this isn't what I thought it would be at this point in time. And so you say, I've got to make a change. Something's got to happen. Or it's something unplanned. And you have a health event, you have a financial event, some kind of event that forces you into this place of saying, okay, I need transformation. And so when we look at these things, we're taught to be, a protector, a provider. One of the phrases, never let them see you sweat. Those sort of things, those things are ingrained within us, to be this strong front as a man in this era. But so much of it's programming and finding a healthy expression. I love that phrase, David, on that, for doing that. Just like strength. Sometimes for men, strength is defined as meanness. How mean is this guy's strong? Well, he's so mean. That's not it. That's not it. So a healthy expression of strength, would definitely be something that would be of value. I mentioned that one fellow I was talking to, and he had some teenage boys that were, having some trouble. And he said, what are we going to do, Scott? I said, teach them to be men. And he looked at me like, what do you mean? They're boys. I was like, but to use David's phrase, a healthy expression of the male is so necessary in this time. And it can be unplanned event, but just think of the natives. They had initiation.
Yeah.
They had rights. What's the American rite of passage for men? What, having your first beer, going to the strip club,
a mortgage.
Yeah, a mortgage. So how do you define a man in this age? And all that programming is upon us. And so the thing that I think, there could be some kind of initiation. I have kind of a Native American background. I always wanted to do, my ceremony. I always wanted to do my vision quest. I wanted to do the sun dance, where they pinned me up, and dangled me. So, but whatever it is, did a little peyote to help me with my vision, or whatever. But it's for the men so much in the mind. And I always talk to them about getting past the mind, because the mind is the gatekeeper. And so that we can get to that place. And sometimes it's, different ways. When I was in the Christian circles, I would talk about crucifying the mind. Jesus was crucified on Golgotha, which is the skull, the place of the skull that had to be crucified. I no longer like those allegories, but or use them. So, but it is about that, so that you can get to the other modalities that are necessary to make true and lasting change.
Yeah, we're in a
Out of the mind into the body.
Out of the mind into the body. Right, exactly. And I'm always going to be the one in the back end that's like sticking up for the mind, and that it works perfectly with the body and perfectly with your emotions. And it just shouldn't be the sole running the show and serving to suppress every other aspect of experience. It was
Everything in balance, eh? But this
Yeah.
world is very mind oriented, and the masculine mind, of course, is, you know, well geared up to be in the accounting or the left braining and all that,
Yes.
the egoing. We need
And you
these
know,
things, but
the one I taught, where I talked, I think, I don't know if it was on the podcast or with the House of Free Will. I taught about the difference between spirit and soul from a definition of a biblical context, that the soul in a biblical context is the mind and the emotions, and that our true being, the centeredness that we have to find, is spirit, that we are spirit and we have a mind and we have emotions and we have a body, and those things serve us when we come from the standpoint of the centeredness of our true nature, which is spirit. And so the spirit then is able to control the mind, to guide the mind. The mind is no longer a distraction. The mind is actually a tool. It is a weapon. And when you understand that the mind produces emotions, and the emotion is the power that gives action. And so that's where I help people make those distinctions, to know that the mind and the emotions is the soul. The soul must be redeemed. The spirit doesn't need to be redeemed. It is the part of you that is most like God. It is God in you. And then when you understand that the soul is the mind and the emotions, and that is the part of us that must be redeemed, and we feel all of this in our bodies. And that's how you have the connection of spirit, soul, and body. And that's where I train from and teach from, is the holistic, the whole person, spirit, soul, and body.
awesome.
That's beautiful. I love that. It brings my consciousness to, there's a lot of different levels of people that would come to me, although I'm really strong with my messaging. I want you to have been doing some inner work before coming here, because I mean, I can teach brand new beginners, but I'm better in a different category, or have more fun. That's just my preference. And there can be like an incredible degree of numbness in our society. I know, Ryan, you and I have talked about this at length, and it, comes from the big traumas where the emotions, Jen was saying in the chat, feelings aren't right or wrong. They just are the way you feel. But also there's, any discrimination. As soon as you feel an emotion, whether it's apathy, grief, fear, lust, anger, pride, which is the egg flap David was referring to before, it's all pain. And even when you get into the so-called higher emotions, they're also pain. They're just more disguised pain because they have fear programming underneath them. And it's, so it seems like there's been a mass numbing, right? That I feel like the whole lifetime, personally, even as a woman, I'm still trying to bring consciousness to matter. I had some scans and x-rays done of my spine. Turns out I'm mangled. Like, oh my God, you should see this. Like,
Oh my goodness.
I'm trying to think. Yeah, she's going like, have you been through severe accidents? And I'm going like, well, yeah, my cousin dropped me on my head when I was little, but I don't know, maybe that was it. I don't know. And then, so just even having seen those pictures now, I'm much more aware. All of a sudden, I can feel the pain of that. And I couldn't really before. I was numb to that pain.
Yeah.
And, so it's a tough journey. And I wasn't happy about that. I wasn't happy about that awareness. As soon as you are aware of it, then it's like, oh, darn, now it's like, was I happy or numb? But at the end of the day, that's not really truly, that's not true at all. That numb is better. And it's our society, right, that wants to get away from the discomfort at all costs and is addicted to the painkillers. And so a lot of us live our life in that numbness. And what do you guys think? Is it exponential for men who maybe have been harmed to a greater degree? Like, look at the example of circumcision, for example, as just one instance. of that? I don't know if we want to get into that, or if you guys want to get into that.
Is there, well, talking about male rituals, it writes a passage. That's indoctrination straight into the torture chamber before you're even a day or two old.
Yeah.
So
actually, the first one, I know obviously the genital mutilation is dreadful, and the trauma that brings is incalculable. However, the first one that we've all encountered is a heel prick test that they do on every baby since the 1960s. And that heel prick is right into the sciatic nerve and then up into the groin, which is your seat of your safety and your security. So I think that, and actually, at the risk of sounding a little conspiratorial, I've got this theory that this wounding is done to create an alter, to create an adjustment or a variation in the psyche, such that we might become more psychopathic. Even I say that because I do wonder why the Jewish people have been picked on when it comes to the circumcision, and the Catholics have been picked on when it comes to the circumcision, and whether this is in order to bring about the army of people who will brutalize others in the world through conquest and all of that kind of thing. I have to wonder about that, honestly. But that's a really tough one that a lot of people have gone through. Yeah.
No, I'd say it's a good point that the whole birthing process is pretty strange by contrast to what might happen naturally. Say if we got amnesia as a society, there was a large tribe of us all by ourselves, we'd figure it out very differently from scratch than this institutionalized hospital birth process with all of the heel prick, circumcision, ointment in the eyes, other questionable and problematic things. But I would say this makes me think to go back to the work. We've all been through journey codes, so we all have this kind of inner knowledge of the main wants that a person has. Doesn't matter if they're male or female. And it just reminds me that the first real, like the harder want to explain, and that they even hold back, at least you did when we taught Beth, the want for love and approval, the want for control, and the want for survival. Those are the easier ones to deal with. But then the want for oneness versus the want for separateness, I would say that heel prick, it triggers that want for separateness, and it makes you want to be separate from your own body, even, because you've just entered in, through the birth canal into the, gone through the most traumatic possible thing that you could never imagine. And then immediately you're reminded that you're not safe and that there's no escape, that you can't get away from the pain receptors in your own body. So it's a good point, David.
How many babies were taken away from their mothers at birth and put in incubators and so on? There's so many things that are done in that medical industry that are counter to the natural order, that you have to ask the question at least as to whether or not this could have been done with, like, in the same way that COVID and all of that, needle stuff was done, it's by design in order to create a particular outcome, and so, because people often say to me, like when I do street activism, humans they just naturally like fight with each other, and we were talking about men squaring up and all of that sort of thing, and I know there's going to be natural kind of boyish hierarchy and that kind of thing, but they use the example of putting 10 puppies in a cage. If you put 10 puppies in a cage and only give them 3 puppies worth of food every day, you're going to create a hierarchy. You're going to create an imbalance in those dogs, and so none of those 10, as they grow up, will raise their own puppies in the most natural of ways. They're going to have been affected by that one way or another. And I think that this is where we are. We are the product of generations who have been mistreated in the cage, and so we're living products of that. And so if we're going to step back from that, then we have to start unpicking the stuff that's hidden deep.
Yeah, excellent points. Exactly how many generations. It was Simon Esler was saying that we're fifth generation war, fifth generation indoctrination in a war culture. And yeah, it's not natural, right? Imagine if all five puppies could eat at, and would they sleep and cuddle more, for example, rather than get into a hierarchy. And do you guys think hierarchy is natural? There's a comment I also want to come back to after this question. Is there something natural about hierarchy? We can see it in nature with wolves and the pack animals that have certain roles defined. What about for humans though? Or is that a product of scarcity and competition
I
unnatural?
think if you look at the villages of people in Africa who are sometimes least affected by the modern world, although I could find a reason why they perhaps are. But I worked with some tribal people back in the 1980s who had very little interaction with the Western world, and still amongst that and other tribes, you'll find that the elders are the council of the wise women, or the elder men are going to be the ones that are instructing, and maybe sometimes getting involved in town village decisions. Yeah, so I think that there is a natural hierarchy, but perhaps it's about what that hierarchy does. And obviously our modern hierarchy is self-serving and isn't really about cuddling. War is very profitable.
Yeah, indeed. Indeed. I think I personally, just my intuitive guess is that it can be very functional to have defined roles. Like how did the geese make it back to the warmer climates in our fall that they're preparing for now? Is they have birds that know they're going to take the lead. I mean, I can't know that they're male actually, but there's certain, and then when that one gets tired, there's another one that knows they're gonna go up front, and they've already done the journey. They have a memory that all of them have to follow because they maybe were born here and they don't even know what that means to fly across the continent. So I'm personally, I'm a fan. You can tell by the King Hero's Journey, the name of the podcast and a bunch of my work, that I think we do better with good leaders. Now, we obviously can get the tyrants and in the absolutely wrong context for that as well. And we're not animals, Sherry said. Yeah, that, like the powers that shouldn't be have convinced us that we are, and they appeal to our animal nature, right? That's what they're always trying to bait. I think it's an excellent point. I want to show this comment by Kevin too. I think there's something juicy in here. It says breaking generational traits can be passed down through families, can be an important factor. Ego is a major player. Healing is letting go of past traumas and worries, removing old traits, new ways of healing the mind and body, finding the true you, learning about the real you, and no one size fits all solution. I totally agree. As we have different past traumas, we all have our own story and our own life. What do you guys think about that? That I agree. We all have our own experiences, that they're entirely unique. And what I've noticed is that, say, with the work of the archetypes and the discrete number of programs, it does seem like everything can be simplified down into, what a totally unique experience can be simplified down into a feeling, a program, an archetype. What do you guys think of that?
I just have a quick comment on that. I took your basic, because you break down those archetypes and the three wants, and we call them wants. And I know you understand this, but those are desperations. We say want, and sometimes we think about want like, oh, I want that, or I want this. But though you are desperate for those three things, you are desperate for control. You are desperate for a need of approval. And so, you know, just emphasizing the real punch underneath those. But what I have done, and you know, and then the archetypes, you know, are also amazing, and you can see those at play in so many ways. But what I do with people is I help them find the archetypes that they create for themselves. And so that's when you get to the specifics. The healing process is the same. That's still my stance. The process is still the same, but the different modalities and the individual unique situations. And out of those unique situations, you develop personal archetypes out of that trauma. And I usually help people try to name them, you know, he who hates money, or he who, you know, you give it a name, because that's what in my mind, what an archetype is. It is a personification of an emotional energy pattern. And so you're giving it, you know, human characteristics of an energy, emotional energy pattern. We recognize those patterns, and I know you're a master at that, Beth. You see the patterns everywhere, as you know, and so do we as we learn these things. But that's how you get down to the specifics of each individual thing. And I agree with you. You don't have to tell the ugly story. That's what I tell people. You can heal without telling the ugly story, because you don't have to tell the ugly story. You just got to feel it. And if you can feel it, then you can release it. And that's the whole push of it. And so you know, that's how I've incorporated those things for individual circumstances for individuals.
Very cool. Yeah, I think there's a lot of comfort in finding the patterns, especially because most or a lot of the suffering is that we think we're the only one suffering like that, because our stories are also unique in some ways. And then by seeing how they fit into really particular patterns, whether programs or archetypes, then you realize, like, oh yeah, just the imagination, say, of the Tonglen technique that I teach as well, just imagining how many people suffer like that. Is it 100, thousands, millions, or if you think of over time, billions? Yeah. And I like what you said also about that the programming really is, just to dovetail on what you said there, Scott, it is desperate measures. We resort to programming ourselves because it's an unworkable situation, right? You know, a baby ends up wanting for their survival. It's easy to say those words, but if you really allow yourself to feel that program, that's formidable. You feel like you're dying. You feel like you're being killed if you're brave enough to really, truly feel it. And hello, Melanie. Nice to see you. There's one of the Journey Code apprentices here that some of you guys already know. And
she was the first one too.
What's that?
Yeah, she was my partner.
Yes. Yeah, you guys know her well. So
yeah, the wants, I would agree. Those wants, you know, they. I'm glad that Scott ramped up the intensification of what they mean, because anyone that's done this work to a deeper level knows you start to get that really shook, deep, terrified feeling. And if you continue, you can move through and let that go too. But it's like the alarms are going off. You know, if you're in a skyscraper and the alarm goes off, you're immediately aware, you know. But if the halon starts to blow down to put out the fires, now you're really, oh my gosh, this building is really badly on fire. We got to get out of here. But if it's a false alarm, then it's okay, you know. You can safely ignore it, or even continue on your path if you know for sure that there's not a fire. And I would say that's kind of the secret to this work, is that the deeper you go, it can get more and more intense. But, you know, I think it was David that either David or Ryan that mentioned the idea of a commitment to freedom. You know, if the two main things to me are a foundation of love and not fear, and a commitment to personal freedom. As long as you can still reassure yourself that that's the path you're on, then you can let go of anything. You know, you can just go through the process to allow it to go. And I think that heel prick and all the other things that we're talking about as far as that develops something, it's I think Gurdjieff used the example of the essence versus the personality. And to me, that's what all of these not I, all these voices in your head that you imagine are you, but then you're like, wait, is that even me? Is that even true? This warning or this whisper in my ear that I'm getting, is that really me? Is that the me that I'm going to be tomorrow morning, or the true me? Comparing the essence versus the personalities that are developed by circumstance, and it starts the moment that we're born. And of course, the way that we do it, it makes it worse. Instead of a comforting situation where you're supported by your family, you're staying in the arms of your mother, we're born directly into this test after test. So we're developing, like you said, alters. I think of them as alters. I know people correlate that to like multiple personality disorder or something, but if we're honest with ourselves, we are all multiple personality disordered. Me right now that's deciding tomorrow I'm going to get up and for the first time do 100 push-ups at 6 a.m. Well, the guy that wakes up tomorrow at 6 a.m. is going to put cancel on that. Nah, kibosh, no way. And for me to drag that other guy back and make him do it is work, right? It's a real technique to be able to like, no, we're going to find out, or whatever that essential piece was that wanted to improve or to stick to the task. It is like having 10 million alters, and they're all yelling and clamoring for their spot.
Yep. I've called it at times as a business coach is like multiple business personality disorder, and many-headed dragons fighting it out. The level of inner conflict is off the charts. Like, we don't need controllers. We're doing it all inside here. They have to do very little just to play on the programming that already exists. And people have themselves in their own jail. That meme of the cat sitting in the, like, the 2-inch fence, and he's like, I'm stuck. I can't get out. We're kind of doing that. Yeah. So I'm curious what you guys think that would it, maybe we already covered this, just about leadership of men, that I very quickly in this inquiry discovered that I don't want to be, not that I don't want to be, but I wouldn't be an authentic leader of men. If I'm like, waving the flag and I'm the leader and I'm the king of kings, which I know that role is taken too. But do you think that men would benefit from having more leadership, like such as you guys out there? I'm not trying to like plant an idea or anything. Yeah. And do you think that more would follow if they saw strong guys doing this work?
Oh, definitely. I think so. We see so much offered to men right now that, in my opinion, focuses on the opposite of this. Where you get this kind of like alpha masculinity. How to be really assertive and strong and determined. You see a lot of those kind of offerings if you're in the online spaces, and I can't remember seeing an offering to men that's not more new agey, and really not one that's specifically only for men, that has that, hey, let's dive in and do the emotional work. Let's unlock whatever has really been challenging you for as long as you can remember, and find a way to work through it and allow that to transform and even to disappear through the process, so that you become something or someone different than what you feel trapped as. So.
Exactly. And do you think that they would do better in groups of exclusively men compared to the mixed company, or is there benefit in the mix?
I suspect there's a question. Mix. But I think ultimately, what comes to mind, I think we were talking about leadership earlier, and even from past cultures. And I think it seems to me that if you create enough trauma within a society, it's easy to program that society to be subservient to authority. But if you empower people, and those people learn and grow wise from their experiences, you're fostering wisdom. And to me, through wisdom, leadership is born.
Nice.
It's not necessarily, what's the word? It comes through having lived, you know?
Yes, it does. There is a natural thing. I've seen that even among children where
And
yeah, go ahead.
and and so inherently in that is a nervous system. I like there's a quote from Itzhak Bentov about the nervous system is consciousness. It is your consciousness. So if you've lived and learned, your nervous system has evolved with your own wisdom. And therein, I suspect you become a leader. And I don't care whether you're a male or female. You now owned that space of learning through the passage of your own experiences with embracing and embodying love. You know?
Wow. Beautifully said. Yeah, that's powerful. Anyone else want to chime in there?
I was just going to say that, you know, this has been my question because I'm like, who signs up for this? I am taking people through the bowels of hell. You know, that's what I tell them. We have to traverse the bowels of hell, which is going into the underworld from a spiritual standpoint. There's a passage that says that Jesus led a host of captives. He descended into Hades, hell, however the translation, and led a host of captives free. And, you know, my application is always that whatever Jesus is doing, that's what we're supposed to be doing. That, you know, I even tease Beth once in a while. I say, I am Jesus. But the point is, we're supposed that is the example. We are to become that enlightened one. We are to become the Christ consciousness. That's who we are. We are the God man, the God women. But anyway, getting a little off track. So how do you appeal? And that's really the question for me is like, okay, the healing's the same, the work is the same, but how do you get a man to that point? And that's why I said either there is an event, a life event, or a created event that is gets them to that point. And you know, I've been, you know, thinking about what would, you know, what would that look like? You know, what what would you appeal? And that's why, like, the other part of what I do is you know, the topT.com is what that is the technology of personal transformation. Because, but how do you appeal? And so the thing that I say that I am offering the power that I believe everyone wants. And that is the power to change. It is the power to transform, no matter what it is. If it's your relationship, if it's your health, or it's your money, you want to go from where you are to where you want to be. Okay, and that's all of our pain, is not being where we want to be. And so the power is given through the process. And so that's what I offer. You know, and I don't know what else to do to get men. Men are intrigued by power. They want power. I say, well, I have the power you're looking for. I have the power to transform. Wherever you are, whatever you're up against, this is the path to where you want to be. Now, you have to walk the path, of course, but the actual process is the same. But of course, there's the modalities, the individual, the specifics, and all of those things. So I don't know what else men would be drawn to. There's probably other things. Wisdom would be awesome. I love Ryan's reference to that. That's amazing. I was going to say a little bit about hierarchy, and then I'll be quiet. The hierarchy thing, I think if there wasn't a scarcity environment that you lived in, you would be able to merge into your roles, and not hierarchy. But when there is a lack environment in which we are put into, this whole system, whether we understand it or not, or believe it or not, is built on scarcity, constantly keeping us in fear. That is what will result. But if we haven't had a good example of what it would be like if we just all were building each other up. if we were all wanted the you to be your highest person, the highest version of yourself, the best version of yourself, if we wanted that for everyone and work towards that, then that would be a whole different environment compared to this, I gotta survive, you gotta survive, and so we've all gotta fight each other, the dog eat dog world to do what we need to do. And that's just not conducive to what we all really want in the deepest part of our hearts. So that's one thing. And so expanding our emotional capacity, and that's what I talk about all the time, expanding our emotional capacity so that we can have a healthy expression of our emotions. And so that's my 2 cents on that.
I love that. And then just to pair it up with what Brian, I believe you were saying, expanding the emotional capacity is expanding the capacity of the nervous system.
Yes.
And that's power right there.
Yes.
That's the electricity that we perceive to lack. We don't experience it because the system just isn't carrying it. So yeah, I totally agree. It was one of the tests I got at my chiropractor, and apparently I have a huge capacity for stress. They frame it around stress, but I think that is at least, I might be mangled, but I'm at least I've got a strong nervous system, can take a lot. It's a blessing and a curse because you can go through a lot of stress, and that's not always a good thing to keep choosing, but yeah. So wow,
He pushes us until a vision pulls us.
That's right. That's right. Yeah. Or like you've said a few times, is that it's the crash, it's the breakdown, it's my wife's leaving, or I got a bad diagnosis or an accident and life came to a full stop and I have no ability to rise above that or power through it. And then it stops you and goes, okay, and that's where I was at 25 years ago with a scary diagnosis in a very masculine role at the time. And I wouldn't have stopped for anything. I really wouldn't have. I felt very much locked into my trajectory. So I invented a breakdown to go there. And thank God I came up with some way, but it's not really the high road. Go team. And I like the point also just about the appeal, so that the process is the same. And this is my instinct as well. But the appeal is different. And the reasons, so this is actually very, very enlightening, that the reasons the man would go to it are different. And do you guys want to speak to that? Like what would make it worth it to be vulnerable to that degree? To go through
usually it's some kind of a threat or an inability, a limit. That would be my answer to that. That the thing in my experience that usually prompts men is suffering by exclusion, suffering by loss, suffering by inability. Like Charlie Parker, the famous saxophone player, when he first tried to play the saxophone, he was so bad. He didn't know anything really. He hadn't really learned the music properly. And the drummer took his ride cymbal off of the stand and threw it at him and hit him in the middle of the small of his back, really injured him in front of everyone. And he ran away with his horn. And supposedly he went home and practiced for like 5 years, 12 hours a day before he came back. So that was the prompt, like absolute humiliation, physical attack. Okay, I don't have what I need. I need to bring my levels up, So I think that's in general for men, that's a pretty good answer, is just feeling like they lack. And, I would say as men in general, there's a lot of us that do lack being in touch with our emotional capacity, that whole scale of emotion that we talk about. When I first found this work because of a counselor that I'd found online, really anger was the only emotion I was allowing myself to experience. So now I can proudly say, okay, I've opened up. Now I'm familiar with all of them. Some are still more uncomfortable than others, but I can sit with sadness or grief or fear, but before I would translate everything into anger. That was just my default back then. So it's possible for other people to if you're always stuck in sad, it's possible to get out of sad and start to get familiar with other emotions too. There's a safe way to do it.
And the beauty is that you actually don't need to travel all of the emotions. It's not like that. What you need to do is let the programs go. Because when you're letting the programs go, you're actually letting go at all levels of the scale, all stations of the scale. And men do tend to default in the higher end of the scale, in the lust, the anger, and the pride. And in a way, that should make it easier. But because we've got the cultural indoctrination that, like, oh, toxic masculinity, and you're like, violent, aggressive, all of that kind of thing, then there's been so many. And I know I was on that trajectory myself as a mom, trying to take the aggression out of my child. Now I'm encouraging him to have a channel called Psycho with the guns and the guitars and and I'm happy
The
when he
knives.
has, yeah, and I'm happy when he has that inclination towards being the protector, which he has since the youngest age. Like, he would just right away get into that mode. And so yeah, it's interesting. Women tend to default the small end of the scale, not small, but the low end of the scale. And I think what people don't realize is that you can heal from every place, and that's how God rigged it in our favor. That the strong man who defaults into anger doesn't need to go down to grief to heal. And maybe grief will come up, but it's not a necessary kind of a thing. And that nobody wants to go down, right? Like, you tell them we're going to the bowels of hell. They're like, oh yeah, that's a party. Can I bring a beer or something, right? Which is a psyop against men, by the way. That's like a total war on testosterone right there, with the hops produce estrogen.
Right. So I know I hate to sound like a bait and switch, but it's kind of like you have to appeal to them in some way. That's why I thought, one is power. Another one I thought of was challenge. Where are my spiritual psychic warriors that are ready to verse the underworld? Let's go on a 10-day journey. Something like that. Some kind of challenge of, like, something similar to that the bowels of hell may be a little too strong, but the spiritual warrior willing to do the psychic warfare or something. I don't know, some kind of, I love the idea, and of course it's really difficult for online, but like David was saying, a wood chopping, part of some kind of physical thing where you exhaust yourself physically so that you can get past some of those fronts and get to a place of some kind of vulnerability to be able to deal with the real issues.
Scott, my wife, and I are doing a program we call Home, because home to where the heart is, because it doesn't, whatever the journey is that we might need to take, ultimately we're heading for the heart, the balance, neutrality. And we've got this program coming up in October, and we plan to do a little bit of somatic dance in that. We've had a beta program recently, and I found that particularly with men, like, doing that really helped to break us out of the mind and bring us a little bit more into the body, and kind of break down some of those barriers of discomfort of engaging with sensitive stuff that we don't normally unpack. We've got locked down quite well behind the rage.
Yes.
Stuff that we need to allow out. So
That's brilliant, David. Yeah. The willingness. We're all over the warrior archetype, which is a classically masculine archetype, and people need to learn how to be uncomfortable before they're forced to be uncomfortable. That's one. If we need a threat, Sean, to appeal to, that's something. If you allow yourself, because that's the game that I play. I take myself out of my comfort zone all the time. I'm always doing that to myself, and it's become a habit. And I'm not so afraid of the new experience, the discomfort, the pain, the fail, right? It happens over and oh, Terry's here. Nice to see you. So unfortunately, I think we're going to have to start to close up for this time. Would you guys agree to come for a part 2? Feel like we're just scratching the surface on this.
Sure.
Yeah, I would. Do I have time? Do I have time to read a poem?
Yes, you do. And
Please,
also to
please do.
share exactly how people could take you up on, say, David, the home workshop that you're doing, and
Thank you.
Sean's art and Scott's coaching, and Ryan, read your poem and tell them how they can, once again, and I'll share that in the chat while you do that.
If I may, before you read the poem, Ryan, I just wanted to share something with you that I thought you might resonate with this. That, you know, I went to war in 1987. I was on the front line for 3 months, and so for me, army war movies that Hollywood put out were always like a bit of a joke because they were nothing like the real thing. And then Saving Private Ryan came out, and I watched that movie and I wept because it was the closest that they'd ever come to recreating the real experience, the sound, the feeling of being in combat. And so for you to have resonated with that, it is interesting to me because it is the best to this day film that I'm aware of that kind of brings you to that, as close as you can possibly get to the experience. I thought I'd just share that with you.
No, I really appreciate that, David. Yeah, I'm not surprised, but thank you for sharing that. That's profound. Yeah.
Absolutely.
So go ahead, Ryan, if you'd
So
like.
sometimes these things just, they write themselves. This just wrote itself this morning. So I don't think about what I'm writing, but it seemed to be inspired by our gathering today. I haven't titled it yet, but here goes. Ever-changing waters, as I come to see, I am. The seas I seek to reach and hold, I grasp to understand. The folly of the riddle in my search to be a man has fallen into open hands. I touch, therefore I am. My heart does know ethereal, the qualities sublime. A vine, a branch extended, the hand I reach is mine.
Mhm. Whoa.
That's wonderful.
Hear, hear.
Yeah. Wow. Powerful.
Wow.
Very nice.
The kingdom of heaven is at hand.
Amen. Amen to that. And you can find, again, Ryan at neuralvitalitynetworks.com to take him up on his work and his coaching as well. And yeah, loving all these shares, Kevin. Absolutely. Really beautiful. I agree. And Scott, would you let people know how they can take you up on any of the work that you do with the transformation keys or anything else?
Yeah, right now, the easiest thing to do is just to DM me on Instagram. That's Scott Lipes. That's it. And so my websites are being kind of revamped, and I've got a couple other things going on with them, so they're not completely functional. You can go to the top T. I think it still comes up, but it's not finished. It's not what I'm doing right now.
Okay.
I mean, it's not what I'm using right now. But you can just DM me and just say consultation or talk, something simple. Doesn't have to be too much, but that'd be the easiest.
And do you use your name Scott Lipes on Instagram? Okay, yeah, nobody uses their name. It drives me crazy. I can be interacting with people for a week and I don't know who they are.
AKA Scotty T. T for transformation.
Scotty T. Nice. Nice. I love that. I love that. And Sean, do you mind to let us know how to take you up on your work and what you would like?
Yeah,
them
right
to-
now, I really am. My main focus right now has been selling those shower curtains just because you bought the first one, Beth. And so what I online, there's a website called, it's called Fine Arts America. But if you go through my website at sbalger.com, you can find it that way. I'm on all the various social media platforms for the most part. So if you want to find me or contact me, I'm on Facebook, I'm on Twitter, I'm on Instagram, et cetera, et cetera. But, that's the main thing I'm focusing on right now is visual art, just that's where my focus is at this moment. Who knows when it'll change, But I appreciate you. This has been fun. Thank you.
I'm very glad. Yeah, it's been excellent to have a reason to connect with you guys. Thank you so much. And David, if you can let people know.
Okay, so we, as I mentioned, we are running a workshop. It's the 3rd and 4th of October, and it's 3 hours long in the evening from about 7:30 p.m. And we're going to do a close-off day a week later after that. We got a free workshop, like a masterclass at the end of September. So please go and check out my Linktree, which is on my YouTube, which is Trinity4Man. And I have an Instagram, which is David Mannall, as spelled here. And yeah, that's it. You could always email me if that sounds like a lot of trouble. Just email me at trinity4man@gmail.com.
Perfect. Okay, fantastic. Great. So I'll get with you guys. We will make another day to do this, maybe sooner than later, if that's possible. So maybe I'll create a little Telegram group, since I managed to lure you guys into that zone, and then we can have a conversation with each other as well.
Sure.
So thank you. Yeah, thank you everyone for.
Thank you, Beth.
You're
Nice to
very
meet you guys
welcome.
that I never
Yeah,
met
nice
before.
to meet you both.
You
Good to
too.
meet you, David.
Yeah, that's so fun for me to be the conduit, the little alchemist in the back end, bring people together. So I'm going to play us out with another very short piece by my son, who this is actually original of his. And we'll catch you guys up really soon. If anybody is interested in the upcoming round of Journey Code, I will also share a link quickly for that. It starts with an orientation next week on September 11th, and the first class isn't until the 18th. So there's still lots of time to join if you would like to do a very deep dive into your own personal journey and healing with the trajectory of helping others on the other side of that. So it's equal part doing your own work. In fact, you can't do this for others if you don't do it for yourself. It doesn't work. And I do it so I keep myself committed and accountable to it as well, just full disclosure. So there's the link to that. It is an application process. It's not because I'm a snob. It's not because I'm checking out your gender first at all. But there is a certain amount of readiness that has to be there for it. It is the deep end, and I've had people in that weren't so ready for it in the past. So I always want to have a conversation. And thanks, Kevin, for coming. That's awesome. I appreciated all your comments. And we'll catch you again. Lots of love for now. Bye, everyone. Deep dive. A deep bow. Bye. Bye for now.